Hey guys, it's Lauren. This is a new media of communication, and I don't know how the sound quality is right now. To be quite honest, I'm going to expose all the YouTuber secret, well, not all the YouTuber, but my YouTuber secret that I'm recording this on my phone voice memos right now. But if this becomes more consistent and you guys like it, I promise you I will invest in a microphone because your girl is not low budget, I promise. Maybe sometimes. Anyway, hi. So I have been thinking about starting a podcast for a while, just because there are a lot of things relating to editing, the editing community, and running a fan page and fandoms that I've spoken about a little bit on YouTube, and I make some TikTok videos about it, but a lot of the things that I talk about in a minute or 3 minutes are larger conversations that I just feel like I could talk about for hours and hours. And a lot of you guys express I just love hearing you talk, or I like playing your videos in the background while I'm doing some other task. And I do that with other YouTube videos or other podcasts as well. I always just love to be stimulated by something. And I know this kind of editing in general, it might be a niche sector of the internet, but I feel my experiences of being in fandoms for the last 10 years and editing for 5 years and just being very immersed in this online space, I feel that could provide for some interesting insight and story time for you guys. So that's kind of what this podcast will be, just a lot of deliberations on the editing community and growing a page, focusing on numbers, building friendships, hopping to different fandoms, discovering who you are as an editor and I don't know, a young adult in the process. Yeah, does that make sense? But yeah, it's gonna kind of just be all encompassing that. So if you're interested in any of what I just mentioned, editing, having a fan page, being in a fandom, you probably are since you're subscribed to me, then you might have some interest in this. And if you find my voice painfully annoying, I am really sorry. I don't blame you. I will also try to self-monitor the pace of my speaking. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I cannot help when a thought comes to mind. And a podcast is the most stream of consciousness thing that there is. So if I'm speaking 100 miles a minute, I'm sorry. Anyway, so for today's episode, I want to talk about something that can sometimes feel like an elephant in the room when we're talking about editing and running a fan page. And this is the fact that it's kind of all a numbers game, and we want to get a lot of likes and followers, and we want to build our accounts and, be big pages. And sometimes this is a conversation that people just don't like to bring up because they don't want to come off as ungrateful or whiny or oh, you're all in it for the numbers. Because of course you want to think that you edit and other people edit because, we just have this great immense love for it, which is super, super true. But we would be lying to ourselves if we said that the numbers didn't matter or that the validation that we get from others when we edit doesn't matter. Because that's just not the case in human nature, and that's not the case in any other context. I'll give you this example. If you write a good paper, you're not going to feel as good about it if you get a D than if you get an A. So you're still allowed to feel proud of that D paper, but again, getting an A on that paper just feels better, and you also get the benefit of a higher grade. If you apply that to editing, sure, getting 5 likes is okay. You can still look at that edit and say, I'm proud of myself, did a good job, and move forward from it. But you're just going to naturally feel better about that edit if you get 1,000 likes, 10,000 likes. It's going to make you think, okay, people actually did like this. And then also you're going to gain more followers from that. You're going to actually see a benefit from a lot of people seeing that and a lot of people liking it. So to kind of try to negate that entire aspect of it and avoid talking about numbers, I think is kind of just counterintuitive, because not to say, oh, we're all in it for the same thing, we all just want followers. I wouldn't say equal parts. This is different for everyone, but there's part of it that's the love and the passion, the artistic component. And then also a part that's yo, I want to be the best. I just want to keep improving. I want to keep seeing that likes and following numbers go up, because that's kind of the metric I'm basing how good of an editor I am off of. And that's not always going to be true. That's not always going to be valid, but it's a pretty good indicator. if you're posting a ton of edits and you're gaining followers exponentially, like, you're going to take that as a sign that you're doing something right. But on the flip side, if that's not happening for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong. So it's like really tricky to just work all of this out in your mind. Like, is it my fault, or is it just like an algorithm's fault? And like, to what extent do you have to look at what you're creating and say, like, I know I can change it up, I know I can do better? And to what extent can you just give yourself the credit of like, you know what, like, I'm proud of this, I wouldn't have done anything differently, and screw the algorithm if I'm not getting followers and likes. All right, so now I want to talk about like 2 butterfly effects or domino effects, whatever you want to call it, that can happen whether you receive like the amount of attention that you were looking for or not. So let's start with first case scenario. You do receive that attention. You post an edit, it blows up, it gets a lot of likes, you gain a lot of followers, and because you got that validation, what do you feel? Motivated. You feel motivated to continue to produce more content that's going to give you that same attention. You feel like, okay, you're on like a power high and you need to maintain it. So it's going to get you editing really, really quickly after you posted like that. Like, you want to post really soon afterwards to not let the hype or whatever die down. And then 2, you want to improve the quality as well. Like, okay, if people were impressed by this, the next one has to be better. So what's happening is you get that first little burst of attention, and then that just motivates you to do bigger and better things. You do that bigger and better thing, you get more attention. And then it just spirals into growing your account, building your confidence, and kind of getting comfortable with that validation. And you kind of expect it at this point, rather than every single time being like, oh my God, I need to fight for it. And that comfortability isn't always like a good thing to have, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But now we'll go to the second case scenario where you don't receive that initial attention. And this one's kind of a more clear-cut like series of events. You post an edit that you really liked, you don't get the attention you think you deserve, you feel dismotivated and don't feel like posting anything else because, oh my God, no one's gonna see it, and you basically just give up. Now, back to that comfortability I mentioned earlier. When you start like consistently receiving a lot of likes, followers, and attention, like I said, you get used to it. And so when that's taken away from you, it's going to hurt like a lot more and be a lot more debilitating to your motivation than to someone who never felt that attention in the first place and was kind of just like down in the gutter, like from the get-go. So in some ways, like, receiving a lot of attention and validation from the get-go isn't always the best thing, because it might just make you less hungry and motivated to really like pull through with your edits and try new things, and honestly realizing that like everything is temporary. And this can be really, really tricky with editing accounts because you never know when that moment is going to come. Like, you can be on a high for a year, 2 years, like your edit's always doing well, and then one random day you post something that you think is of good quality and suddenly like no likes, no views, and then this continues. And again, like the longer that high lasts for, the worse it's going to feel when it comes crashing down and you're not receiving that same attention as before. So now I've kind of gone through like 2 bad case scenarios, 2 case scenarios you don't want to be in. The first one being you successfully receive that attention, the likes, comments, and follows, and then it suddenly stops and you don't know what to do. Or you never received any of that in the first place and you feel like you never did anything right and you just can't figure out how to put yourself out there. And I have 2 different ways I think you can overcome the crappiness of this all. So the first answer is like a less realistic one, but if your love for editing is stronger than your desire for followers and attention, then this isn't going to impact you a lot. Like, if you just love posting edits so much and love just participating like in a fandom to the point where like you could post and like negative people could see it and you'd be fine, like then you're in a good place. Because again, we can't ignore the numbers aspect of this, but numbers aren't as important to some people as others, and that's something like we should also respect. These are also people who are possibly just less emotionally invested in the fandom aspect of it and are really just more invested in the creative aspect of making edits and like appreciating the characters and plot points in a show. And that's kind of a completely different headspace from someone who's like, oh my God, if my edit doesn't blow up of this show, then I'm a horrible fan, I'm a horrible editor, and I amount to nothing. So it honestly comes down to a personality difference, like how much you equate your self-worth to those numbers. Because again, for some people, it doesn't matter. And what ends up happening is that their love for editing is like so strong that they're really just producing good stuff. And then they might just accidentally like become a huge editing page. Like I'm not saying this is a common scenario for someone to just like obliviously like, oh, I just love editing so much my account blew up, which is why I kind of segued into this point with it's not the most realistic. Because like I said, human nature tells us that like we care about these things like attention and validation and like just doing it out of like the love from our hearts. It's a nice sentiment and it's true some of the time, but we can't convince ourselves that that's the full truth. So this now brings me into solution two to that dilemma we mentioned earlier. You have to be really strategic about operating an editing account or a fan account. And you might be thinking like, Lauren, is it ever that serious? Like, I just want to post some velocity edits of Stranger Things or Never Have I Ever or whatever the show is. But like, we are not existing in a physical space when it comes to doing all of this. We are in a social space and the social norms are different, and what you need to do to kind of put yourself out there and put yourself on the roster are different. And this isn't a new idea I'm bringing upon. Like, people literally study this for a living. People study communications for a living and how to effectively communicate your ideas or your work. But what I mean by being strategic is kind of looking at your account and everything you're doing from a third person perspective that's like really objective. So for example, let's say like my account's not doing too well and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't understand. The edit I just posted was so good. It's like the best thing that I've ever created. And like, yeah, maybe it's good, but maybe the issue you're not seeing is that it's super repetitive. It's the same transitions you've been doing in your last 10 edits, but maybe you've just done them in a cleaner way. And that's not to kind of dilute the importance of improving as a technical editor. Like if the edit is more smooth than the last couple times you did the transition, that's something to be proud of. But there are so many factors that go into editing that like nailing one component of it isn't going to be a lasting and viable solution, if that makes sense. And like other people, when they watch your content, they're going to be seeing things that you don't see. So I kind of like had a personal experience with being in kind of an editing rut. So I'll go through that. Kind of going back to like the origins of my edit account, I opened it in like October or November of 2017. And I was posting like Riverdale edits, and this was right as I think season 2 was airing. So Riverdale was a really popular show at this time, and Riverdale edits were everywhere. It wasn't just like Riverdale fans that were watching these edits. It was just like normal people who are more casual fans. Like people from my high school would be like, oh my God, I saw your Riverdale edit just like casually on my explore page. Like, cool. And I was like, awesome. But I saw some very quick traction like within the first 2 or 3 edits that I posted. And guys, this did not stop for like 2 or 3 years. Like from 2017 to 2020, I was always seeing over 100K views. My followers were always growing exponentially. And I don't mean this in a braggy way, because even looking back on it, the edits that I posted, I'm like, why was I gaining that many followers? Like, why was I such a big editor at the time? But regardless, I'm very grateful for it. But it was just like, it was something I had gotten so used to. I was so comfortable just always getting what I thought I deserved out of the content I was producing. And that's like that's something I'm very grateful for, because that's not always going to be the case. I feel like I was one of the very few lucky ones. But then it came to like mid 2020, like maybe COVID era, where I don't really know what was going on. Maybe I was posting less, maybe Riverdale was less popular, like people weren't editing as frequently. There could have been a million reasons why, but my account just started slowing down. I had reached like 70,000 followers at a point, which was like, that's a lot of followers. And then I was just teetering between 70 or 65K and 70 for like an entire year. Like, I had a really long lasting high, but I also had like a pretty long lasting low. And it was just like a lot for me because I was always so used to just like, I could produce my worst piece of work and still get like a decent amount of likes to make me feel comfortable. And I always felt like, okay, I will always have this validation, like it's just not going to go away. And obviously that wasn't the case. And I'm not going to say it left entirely. Like, was I still getting tens of thousands of views and like hundreds of comments? Yes. But guys, I'm comparing this to like years before where the numbers were a lot bigger. And I kind of had that internal battle of like, I'm just no good anymore. Like, is this just the end of editing for me, like, completely? I've been editing for over 3 years, and like a lot of people who I used to edit with, they don't edit anymore. Like, maybe this is just a phase of my life that I'm over. So I almost just stopped entirely. And I still remember like exactly the edit that I posted that I realized like, okay, I'm back. It was like a plot twist edit of like from Donald Trump to Lily Reinhart, which like, don't even ask. I don't know what the Riverdale fandom shenanigans were at the time, but it was posted in 2020. You could probably find it on my page, but basically going into that edit, I was like, I want to do everything differently from what I've done before. I've posted almost 100 Riverdale edits. And yes, I've tried new techniques and I've improved or whatever, but I just always stick to what I'm comfortable with and what I know people will like. And obviously at this point, like, that's not working. So even if people don't like it and they don't receive it well, and it's the biggest flop of my entire editing career, I need to do something different. So I remember it was a photo edit. I wasn't really used to photo edits, and I just whipped out all of these things that I literally had never done before. Like, I still remember to that day, like, making that edit. It was COVID summer. I was outside. I was just like so locked in. I was making that to avoid writing my college essays because I was that into it. And I posted that edit being like, okay, this could be the end of it all. But it had done well than any of my other work for like maybe a year prior, at least like a couple of months. And that was when I realized I'm like, okay, there's absolutely nothing wrong with changing it up. Like, I think the biggest misconception in the editing community, and this, I don't know if this will be a hot take, but the biggest misconception is that like, being consistent is like the key to growing any account. And what I mean by that is like, you have to always post in the same style. You have to have a coordinated like profile grid where all the covers match, and you need to do this and that that's like super coordinated and organized because that appeals to people and people are into that. But it's like, now, like, ever since I posted that edit of Lily, everything I've posted since then, all I'm doing is just experimenting. Now, when I start an edit, instead of going into it being like, okay, what things do I know I'm going to use that I've used in past edits? I go into it thinking, okay, what's something I can do that I've never done before? And I've held myself to that standard for the last three years, since 2020. I'm like, if I'm making an edit, there has to be something different. There has to be something that, you know, it's still going to speak to my style, but something I do differently that I wouldn't have done the edit before or the edit before that one. And I do this not knowing if people are going to receive it well, not knowing if people are going to like it, but I still do it with the purpose of just challenging myself because, yeah, validation from other people is going to give you motivation, but also challenging yourself and being the one to give yourself motivation by being your own biggest competitor and challenger. Like, now in the position that I'm in where like I am consistently receiving like an abundance of attention and validation when it comes to my edits, which again, I can't even describe how grateful I am for that. Even it being in this position now, like, and receiving just copious amounts of just amazing validation from you guys, it still feels so good just to edit in a way that challenges myself. As good as it feels to hear other people tell me like, oh, this edit is so good, you're so talented, it feels better to just like look back at what I've made and think, okay, like I really pushed myself with that one. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, but I was able to, and I'm just really, really proud of myself. And I've realized that that's kind of what it all boils down to. You are not going to be able to get through the ups and downs of like running an editing account and wanting to gain followers without being content with just challenging yourself and feeling self-satisfaction from what you produce. At the end of the day, you don't have full control over those numbers. You could have your account deleted in a day. You could have 1 million people unfollow you out of nowhere with no explanation. All of this, it's just not a given. The one thing that you can control, however, is how you feel about yourself and the work that you're producing. So at the end of the day, if you're equating your self-worth to that number, it's just going to be a cycle of feeling bad for yourself, feeling down in the ditch. And when you're down like that, it's very hard to find that motivation and get up again. And if you look at every single edit that flops as like I'm horrible, like I'm the worst editor ever, you will literally like never get to the point where you want to be just because you will not have the desire or motivation to put in the effort. Your self-worth is based on so many other things. It's how you treat other people in the editing community, how you interact with them. Are you really nice in people's comment sections? Are you helpful to others? Are you proud of what you're producing? These are all things that matter a hell of a lot more than a follower count in the long run. I'm at least speaking for myself when I say this. Like, in the long run, I don't remember the exact amount of views that my biggest edit has ever gotten, but I do remember like my best and most proudest moments of like while I was actually editing on my computer, when I executed a transition I never thought I could do, when I was watching the final product before ever posting it anywhere and just watched something that I really, really thought was an ode to my hard work. Again, for me at least, these are the moments that I remember more than the moments of scrolling, refreshing my notifications, refreshing to see if the follower count went up and if I've gotten more comments, because these things just like pale in comparison to genuinely feeling proud of yourself and something you've created and the potential ways it's been able to impact other people. So I think this conversation is a lot about just rewiring and reframing your mindset. And this isn't something that happens in a day. And I know also, like, I just want to be self-aware about the fact that all of this could be very, like, annoying coming from me, because it's like, oh, of course you're going to say all of this. You have a lot of followers, you have a lot of this and that. But again, like, that was not always the case. And I've been through so many different phases of equating my self-worth to that number and feeling so unsuccessful, not just in editing, but just in life overall, because of a lack of external validation from people online. But I am here to say, at the end of the day, the things that have felt that they've mattered to me, like more so in the long run, are the moments of feeling proud and satisfied of myself, as opposed to feeling or receiving validation from other people. And again, like, this is not something that is like easy to like accept or like believe for a lot of people. Some people are like, I'm my own worst enemy. Like, I need validation from other people. I'm never going to validate myself. Girl, me too. I am the hardest person on myself, which is why like I feel like it is good advice coming from me, because even if I can be so hard on myself but still be able to feel proud and like really remember those moments of pride and satisfaction, then anyone should be able to. So I have no decorum when it comes to podcasts. Podcasts vary in length greatly. They can be 10 minutes, they could be an hour. But I think I've covered basically all I wanted to say for this episode. And there will be hopefully more to come. But at the end of the day, something that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable should be fun and enjoyable. And that's what I want editing to be for everyone. That's what editing is to me. And I'm not going to ignore the fact that there are so many stressful components to it. But there is also so much to feel proud of yourself about. Even the little things that you think are nothing are something. I promise you. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed me speaking for how many minutes? Almost 25 at this point. Oh, God. I never thought anyone would want to listen to me speak for 25 minutes straight, so we'll see. But, yeah, I hope you guys have a great day or night wherever you are, and please look forward to more episodes. I've been in like 75 million fandoms. I am a grandma. I've said it once. I'll say it again. So I'm really going to have to start like putting in chronological order every fan page I've ever had, and hopefully I can remember the fate of all of them. I know some of them are still up, but definitely not all. All right, yeah. I will speak to you guys at a later time, and bye.